Hi, welcome to my channel, and today I'm doing a review of the Enter the Dark House bundle that includes Welcome to the Dark House and Return to the Dark House. The first part of this video is going to be a spoiler-free review of the first book, Welcome to the Dark House, while the second part of the video is going to be a spoiler review of both the first book and the second book. So timestamps are going to be in the description and also in the pinned comment, just in case you wanted to skip around, and that will be easier for you. So the synopsis of the first book is our main character, Ivy Jensen, enters a horror essay contest that is run by famous director Justin Blake. She and other 6 people win the essay contest, and as their reward, they get to go to the dark house that was built by Justin Blake, where they get to experience his unpublished movie that he's been working on. But while they're here at the dark house, in order to get that prize of seeing the movie, they have to face their fears. And yeah, that's what the synopsis is. And I'm gonna go into a somewhat spoiler-free review. At least I'm gonna try to. So I'm gonna put this down because it's very heavy for my arm. So ultimately, for the first book, Welcome to the Dark House, I rated it a 2 out of 5 for a couple reasons. But we're gonna go into the reasons that I liked about the book first. The thing that kept the book from being like a 0 star for me was the writing. The writing is amazing, it's beautiful, and it's very descriptive. The author's words and sentences emphasize the imagery, tone, and mood of the whole book. And as I was reading, I felt as if I was watching a movie, basically, which I find appealing in books. However, writing is not enough to push a book to like a 3-star or higher. So now there's the parts that I kind of didn't like that stopped the book from reaching a 3-star. First, starting up with setup. With a story like this, there's a lot of setup, I know that, especially when you have a lot of characters. And the setup was long. It took a while for things to fall into place and for us to get to that turning point of the book. For me, the setup felt like it took like half of the book, which is kind of not appealing, but I know why the setup took a while, and that's because there was a lot of characters coming into the story. Altogether, there's about 7 characters except for one, because she ends up missing at the beginning of the story. Our 6 remaining characters are Ivy, Parker, Sheila, Frankie, Garth, and Natalie. And what the author did with these 6 characters is constantly switch point of views between them. So after each chapter, it will be a new person telling their point of view. And for me, that kind of confused me because, again, they're switching constantly, and at some point I kind of forgot who the main character was, which is kind of not good. And it was kind of hard to tell who was who because some of the characters kind of have similar ways of talking. So I spent like a large amount of energy trying to figure out who was talking. A large amount of characters was one of the reasons why I pushed the book down in rating, along with the long setup that happened. In regards to plot, I really didn't integrate it into my rating because for me, I already knew what the plot was going to be. I knew kind of how the story was going to end when I picked it up from the bookstore. So I kind of thought it was unfair for me to put my already assumptions on the rating, since I kind of already knew how it was going to end, because with this type of plot, it's a basic plot that you see a lot, especially in horror movies or thriller movies. So plot wasn't really connected with my rating. In regards to character interactions, that was another area that went into my rating, because with interactions it was kind of like a seesaw. You had interactions that were good, that pushed the plot forward and were believable and didn't take away from the story itself. While on the other hand, you also had interactions that were just kind of out of place and didn't really do anything for the story. They were just simply there, and some of them were kind of hard to read because they were just a little bit cringy, just a little bit. But yeah, that's why interactions between characters went into my rating. Though overall, I did like the story. It was an okay story. That's what the 2-star means for me. It was okay. It wasn't life-changing or anything. It wasn't a new plot line or anything like that with new twists or anything like that. It was just a story that was fun to read, especially with the writing that the author has, because the writing, like I said, was the strong point of the book, and it was the reason why I continued reading towards the end and why I continued to pick up the second book. So even though I rated it 2 stars, I still really liked the story. So yeah, I really don't know what else to say about the story in regards to a spoiler-free area. So I'm just gonna go into the spoiler part. Okay, so this is probably me being nitpicky, but there are areas that also accommodated to my rating. Specifically, it was the interactions between characters that really threw me off when trying to stay into the mood of the story. More specifically with the romance that happened between 2 characters and 2 to 3 other characters, which was with, well, the main one that bothered me a little bit, that took me out of the story, was between Frankie, Garth, and Sheila. That little romance scene wasn't appealing. It wasn't very important to the story. I felt like it was just kind of put there just so like some tensions could be there a little bit, but not really. I don't know. It was mostly just a lot of jealousy that happened in that, and that's why it really didn't fit, and it just I don't know how to explain it. I just didn't really like that I just really didn't like that little triangle that was kind of about to happen. But yeah, I just didn't like that. And the same thing with Parker and Ivy. It was a weird romance because they did just meet, all of them, like a couple hours before, and they're already trying to get with each other. I mean, I understand it on some level because it's an attraction to people who have similar interests to yourself, and I get that, but I felt like it just kind of felt forced and went straight into romance without actually trying to be friends first. I don't know. For me, that romance did nothing for the story besides trying to get the characters together, but yeah, to me it kind of just seemed pointless. Why I rated it 2 is because, again, the setup. It took like this chunk of the book, like a pretty big chunk, and it took a while for me to get to that amusement park, which I liked. I loved the amusement park. I loved learning and reading about each of their nightmares and how Justin put their nightmares into their own rides. I liked that part, especially Frankie's. I liked his ride. It was the ride that had like a lot of emotion behind it and a lot of imagery that you could see in your mind. I'm just kind of sad that it was a small part of the book. And also that after Frankie's, everybody else's ride were kind of shorter compared to his. Especially Sheila's. Hers, I felt like, was pretty short and it didn't really satisfy me a little bit. I don't know. I just felt like some of the rides were short. And that was kind of disappointing a little bit. Though the most confusing ride I would say would though the most confusing ride that was red was Garth's. His was just like a horror movie chase scene, which I don't mind, but I mean, I don't know. Garth just kind of confused me a little bit. I'm not sure what I feel about his. Because on one hand, I think he just wanted to be chased by Justin's horror characters. And on the other hand, I think he was actually scared of them, but I am not really sure. It might be in the middle, but his was the most confusing, and I really didn't care about that because, again, I wasn't really there for the chase scene, even though it was fun to read. I just wanted to see how these guys' nightmares impacted them mostly. So I really can't think of anything else that really bothered me about the story. The first book was okay. Again, really wasn't anything to talk about. So the second book though was definitely better than the first one. For the second book, I rated it a 4 out of 5 because a lot of the problems I had with the first book were improved upon in the second book. The characters were better, the writing was still amazing, the pacing was good, and the setup was amazing too, so it really improved upon itself from the first book. I love the character interaction between Ivy and all the people around her, especially between Ivy and Taylor. I thought that was so cute, and I just really wanted to make sure that they were okay at the end. I really wanted them to just stay alive at the end so that they could continue their friendship. But yeah. And I also loved how we got to see how Ivy was influenced by her time at the Dark House, how it caused her to be obsessed with finding her killer and her parents' killer and the killer. I loved seeing that. And the setup for Return to the Dark House again was amazing. I liked it. It wasn't too long compared to the first one. And that setup really showed you how Ivy was, I guess, influencing her world around her and how she was reacting to the world around her. So I love the setup. That's why I rated it a 4. I basically just liked the second book better than the first one. But when thinking about the ending to the second one, I did not like it at all. I was kind of annoyed that the killer ran away. And the reason for that is because we already know who the killer was. We know that Justin, I think it is. Not really sure about that, but we already know that he's the one who killed Ivy's parents. So Ivy's parents' killer is the one that orchestrated this whole dark house thing, and we already knew that. So I really didn't see why the killer had to run away. Like, that was disappointing. I really wanted something to happen where he got stuck and the police got him. And I think the reason for that is because the author might have been planning a third one, but I'm not too sure if that actually happened or not. But yeah, I didn't like the ending. I also, when we reached the ending, I kind of felt like the tasks that Ivy had to go through were pointless a little bit. Like, they could go to Parker at any time. They could, like, at one point when I was reading, I felt like they could have just ignored the killer and gone to gone to Parker and Natalie at any time, and those tasks that they were doing were pointless. I don't know, because I don't think we see I don't know, I'm trying to say, like, I don't think we could see when we're reading if the killer could actually get to Ivy and Taylor. I think he can, but I don't know. But for some reason, after the book ended, those little tasks that they had to do felt a little pointless. But again, they were fun to read about, but they were pointless. I think it was pointless in regards to, like, actually finding out the killer's past and his connection to Ricky. I think that's why it felt pointless to me, because we never really fully got that connection and, like, a full picture of his past, which I think that's why it felt pointless to see those tasks play out a little bit. But yeah, just gonna leave that for now. I'm trying to think of what else to say. All I can say is that I am happy that Natalie got to live. Yeah, I'm very happy about that. With the second book, I really don't know what to say. A lot of the stuff with the second book is me being nitpicky about certain scenes and about the ending, which again annoys me. But other than that, I really can't figure out anything wrong with it. It was great. I liked it a lot. But yeah, while I was reading, I was trying to figure out why the killer was so obsessed with Ivy that at some point I thought that Parker might have been the killer, because, like, I don't know, that just came up in my mind. Like, what if Parker was the killer and he was just using Ivy all this time to get close to her, and there was gonna be a betrayal happening? I don't know. That after I thought about it, I knew that couldn't work out in regards to, like, timing and age, because yeah, it just didn't work out. But yeah, at some point I kind of wanted Parker to be the killer. At another point, I also wanted the killer to be someone close to Ivy, like maybe her cousins, or like one of her co-workers, or even someone in the police, or one of her doctors. Yeah, I don't know. With the killer, it was just kind of because again, we don't really learn much about the killer except that he killed Ivy's parents and that he's obsessed with her for some reason. But yeah, that was kind of my theories on the book. If you're wondering if you should read this, I would say yes, but that depends if you're someone who is able to deal with the first book, basically. If you're someone who doesn't really mind a lot of setup, or isn't really nitpicky about all scenes, But yeah, I would really recommend it if you would like to read a story that's very descriptive in the scenes and setup and characters and stuff like that. But I would definitely just read it for the writing because, like I said, the writing is very beautiful. It's descriptive. It makes you feel as if you're watching a movie, which for me, that's points. So, yeah. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, and I hope you have a nice day. If you read this book, can you tell me your thoughts?